Music is playing, and 3 minutes left. Apparently, it says end broadcast, so I assume it's working. Hello. So stop streaming is blue, and broadcast is blue, stop recording is blue. Z is typing, so hopefully... Oh, excellent, we're live. And you don't hear anything yet except the music, right? Excellent. What screen am I on? Live. Alright. I don't believe I can do. I only have starting soon, live feed 2, and Kicker template. Let me see Kicker template and VLC video source. VLC video source is playing. No, I can't. And it is selected. It is selected to be visible. Right, 30 more seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. And we're live. Hello everyone, happy Canada Day. Yes, so, and just for those who do not know, SCOTUS ended its 2023 term yesterday and released, as for some reason they like to do this, they released all the contentious cases that were going to draw either outrage or praise all on that day. So there was a bevy of interesting SCOTUS cases that came out yesterday. First and most interesting, in my opinion, would be the let me just pull this up. It is called Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard. This is the affirmative action case. Alright. Yeah. Yep. I was just pulling it up. This is, of course, a National Review article written about the case, as well. Yes. Let me just pull up something else about it. His Twitter articles are nice, but they aren't as informative as certain other things are. But this should be. Just as you can see, here is the holding of the case. Alright, to the Wikipedia article. One moment. It has been sent. Yes. Though it hasn't. It's been back and forth, but it's never really been anything that decisive ruled on it. It's always kind of been. It's been ruled on in a traditionally very Roberts-esque way, and I say that interestingly enough because Roberts actually wrote this decision. But this is so far the most decisive case that they have ruled on in relation to affirmative action. Mm-hmm. Yes, she recused herself. Well, I could make the obvious. I could. Sorry? Well, I could make the obvious joke, but YouTube probably wouldn't like that, so maybe I'll make it in the after hours. Right. Do you remember what this case was? Was it like a highly contentious one, or is it a more normal? Hmm? Oh. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. And I will say that oh, I'm not entirely sure of that case. If you read the dissent she wrote relating to the case, then she, recusing herself was the correct thing to do, because if you've ever seen a dissent that has zero legal arguments in it, and is just it is just rhetorical in nature, that's the dissent. It is just an activist raging at a legal decision in the form of a dissent. Yeah. Ha- the chat is unmuted. Have you heard? Uh, has this been ongoing, or is this a new phenomenon? Oh, the chat is unmuted. All right, I am there. Hmm. Yes. Yes. It's all right. Let me try. Uh, does this work? All right. Due to technical difficulties, while we resolve this, I think it'd be best I just put the music back on, if everyone agrees. All right. doesn't seem to be anything in Beacon. Is there anything in OBS that could be causing this? I think would it be easiest if I just screen shared OBS and you can take a look and see if there's anything that is out of place? Alright, fine. Settings. Audio. Yes, voice chat mic can mix correct. Can anyone, can you hear anyone else speak?
Well, right now the music is still playing for Z, but give it a few seconds because you got to remember that there's a lag.
All right.
Okay, now it's good. Now
And it's good.
I can hear us. Okay, so
Shall we just restart this last segment then? Alright.
so due to technical difficulties, the only person that you've been hearing this entire time is Dale. Because Dale is the one producing today, and it looks like I didn't go over all of the settings with him before. So I apologize for that, and for the lost 20 minutes. Let me reintroduce myself. I am Erica. I am your resident anarchist and host of the Anarchist Transmission podcast. Today I am joined by, obviously, Dale, who has already introduced himself, so screw him. I am also joined by my lovely fiancée, Kota. Say hello again, Kota.
Hello again, everyone.
And we are also joined by our resident of the state that doesn't exist, Luna. Say hello, Luna.
Like now.
And nothing. Just like the first time.
No.
And I would also like to say a special thank you to our resident QAZ for noticing this issue and pointing it out before we went the whole show before noticing it.
I will get the static worked out with Dale.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Um,
We'll get that fixed. I assume that's probably his mic.
All his fault.
It's but it was never coming out when I was not producing. Is that is this something that is changed because I'm?
It's on your side, yeah. There shouldn't be any filters. I'm not sure exactly what's going on.
Is the static any better, Z? I'm just gonna drop my volume down. I guess Z or Stoner if you were this. It's still bad. Alright, I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna mute myself real quick and tell me if the static goes away.
No, it's not. it's I'll figure it out later.
Alright, so it seems Z has said it is gone when I mute, so for the rest of the
Okay.
episode, I'm just going to be operating on a push to talk type of situation, so to try to cut most of it out. And with that, I will
Yeah.
remute myself.
Yeah, it's your microphone. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with it. Um, but it's something that I'll help you get fixed. Uh, yeah, it's something I'll help you get fixed later on. Um, but make sure that you get your mic turned back up. Uh, actually, real quick. In Yeah, no. I'll get that fixed later. Um, so today we're talking about the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action, and this all originated from a case against Harvard where they were discriminating against Asians, not white people, Asians.
Just to note, it was actually two cases. One was against Harvard, and the other was North Carolina. But the Supreme Court merged them into one.
You need to turn up your microphone.
All right. So it was originally two cases. One was against Harvard, and the other was against University of North Carolina. But the Supreme Court merged them.
Okay. And that's fine. But the one that I had known about was the one against Harvard. Um, before we had actually found out about our technical issues, we had um, we had been talking about the fact that there is a justice missing from the case opinions, a justice that didn't sign on to any opinions, and I was wondering why. And it's apparently because Justice Brown or Justice Jackson.
Yeah, it's Justice Jackson.
Okay, Justice Jackson recused herself. And Dale had been saying that it's because of the rantings of the dissent, but it reminded me a lot about Barnett versus West Virginia State Board of Education, which is also a landmark case. It didn't strike down affirmative action like this did, but it's one of the key landmark cases of the 20th century. And we've talked about it before on the channel. But there was a big to do about the Nazi regime in that case. And I'm going to see if I can't find the dissent for Dale to bring up.
All right. If when you do find it, just DM it to me and I'll pull it up.
Yep, I'm gonna do that right now. So there was only one dissent written in this. And it was written by
Felix Frankfurter wrote it.
yeah, Justice Frankfurter, who, by the way, is Jewish, he went on this long rant about how uh, how patriotism should be forced. And I'm thinking to myself while I was reading the actual dissent, this dude sides with Hitler. He's a Jew, but he sides with Hitler. And it was just mind-blowing listening, or not listening, but reading the dissent of that case. And 7 of the justices that had overturned the previous or let's see, I can't remember how many justices. Okay, so 3 were in the dissent, but only 1 wrote a dissent. Frankfurter wrote the dissent. Roberts and Reed signed on to the dissent. And then the justice that wrote the initial the majority opinion was Justice Jackson. He was joined by 5 people: Justice Stone, Black, Douglas, Murphy, and Rutledge. And then Black wrote a concurring opinion, and he was joined by Douglas. And then Murphy wrote his own opinion.
I
But
would
in
just.
all,
Sorry.
in,
I would.
in go ahead.
I would just like to point out that it's interesting how in both of these cases there is both a Justice Roberts and a Jackson.
um, but in this, the initial case that it overturned, which was Gobitis. Let's see if I can. Gobitis versus Minersville. And I'll send that to you, Dale.
All right.
In Gobitis, every single justice except for 1 sided with the government. Frankfurter, Hughes, Reynolds, Roberts, Black, Reed, Douglas, and Murphy. All of them sided with the government. And the only dissent was Stone. But if you look at the if you look at Barnett, that completely flipped. Black, Douglas, and Murphy, they wrote their own opinions in Barnett to recant what they signed on to that was written by Frankfurter in the 1938 case of Gobitis. And then Hughes, I believe, had passed away. And he was replaced by Jackson. And then Stone had held the exact same position the entire time. He was quite literally the only one in the 1938 case and in the 1943 case that didn't change his opinion. in favor of the the students versus the state. Anyways, I am so lost because I'm not the one producing today. Let's take a look here. So back to the Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard. I saw a lot of outcry on Twitter about it this week. And I saw some of the most racist things being said. A lot of which were deleted.
The outcry about it was mostly, from what I saw on Twitter, it was almost all, if we base college admissions on merit, black people won't be able to get into college. That was like the sum of all the outrage on Twitter about this decision.
Yeah, and I saw some people arguing that admissions were going to be racist against black people now that affirmative action is gone, but that's the whole point of getting rid of affirmative action in the first place. If you have affirmative action and they discriminate, or if you get rid of affirmative action and they do discriminate, you can actually sue them. You don't have to get this whole class action lawsuit set up in order to sue for the right to be admitted. You just sue them on an individual basis. Because if you deserve to be there, and you can point to someone that you should have easily beaten out, then you've got a case. And anyone suing Harvard is going to make really good money.
I am of the opinion that I am of the opinion that a lot of mid-level bureaucrats are gonna find out real soon, because I doubt they're capable of changing their opinions on things, even with this ruling.
Yeah, so, you had put in Justice Roberts' redemption.
Yes.
Why did you say Justice Roberts' redemption?
Well, because he was the one who actually wrote the majority opinion in this case, as well as another interesting case that came out. And so, on the right, there is a, let's say, opinion of Justice John Roberts that he is he is essentially a human wet noodle, and that despite knowing that certain things should be ruled in certain ways, he won't. He will side with what he believes is the court of public opinion over, actual legally meritorious opinions. And I mean, truth be told, I buy into that belief that he is essentially a human wet noodle. And I was expecting this to be a 5-4 decision, to be honest, and Roberts siding with the other three liberals. But he grew up backbone back, it seems.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Roberts, I have no faith in him. The man is still living in the 90s.
That is true.
I think Thomas and Alito have been but there is one opinion from Thomas that I would like to see go past the Second Amendment.
Are you talking about Bruin?
Yeah, I'm talking about Bruin. Text, history, and tradition. So, we've got a lot of crap going on in the First Amendment world in the US right now. And the pretty much every single amendment has been ruled on by the courts in such a way that there's a quote unquote interest balancing test. There's strict scrutiny, there's um, intermediate scrutiny, and then there's I don't remember the third level of scrutiny. But in the
Strict
first
scrutiny.
I already said strict scrutiny.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I misheard that.
Let's see.
Also, in answer to a question by Stoner, no, Alito was not murdered by a woke terrorist. He is still alive, thankfully.
I'm trying to figure out what the third one is.
I don't think any Supreme Court justices died recently, Stoner. I think the last Supreme Court justice to die was the retired, what was his name? Stevenson or something? He was the super anti-gun one. He was like 99 years old or something. But that was still, I think that was at least a year or two ago.
No, Alito didn't die. No.
Breyer retired though, and that's why Jackson is now on the court.
The only justice that has passed away recently was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, but that was in 2020.
That Stoner, that was a
congressional
House representative.
Yeah, that was Steve Scalise, who at the time was the majority whip. He was shot, but he survived. Also, thankfully, no one actually died at the event, but just Steve Scalise was injured.
Okay, so there's three levels of scrutiny. There's strict, there's intermediate, and then there's rational basis. In most cases, you have strict and intermediate scrutiny. And with the Second Amendment, the way they determined was whether or not there is a valid government interest. Well, they do the same thing in the First Amendment. There's strict scrutiny, and then there's intermediate scrutiny. The strict scrutiny is or the way they determine how they choose whether to judge by strict or intermediate scrutiny is by a rule called time, place, and manner. So in public, so on a sidewalk, in a street, somewhere that is open to the public, in a park, that would be subject to strict scrutiny. But even then, the Supreme Court has given a little bit of latitude to the government to restrict freedom of speech, even in public spaces, which is the time portion of that test. Is it late at night? Yeah, then you shouldn't be out there doing that. The place portion of that test is where you get a bit more into government interest. So, say for instance, inside a police building, inside town hall, inside wherever the government owns. You're actually inside and the government is doing some sort of business. Now they have a bit more interest and a little bit more uh, latitude to restrict your ability to your freedom of speech, which I think is bull. Um, so that's the time, the place, and then the manner. So what type of speech are you doing? Are you protesting? Are you video recording? Are you uh, are you walking around with a sign? Given those three elements, uh, generally, you can't go into town hall and protest, but you can go into town hall and video record. That's the kind of time, place, and manner restrictions I think are bullshit. Because if you have the freedom to record, that's a form of speech as defined by SCOTUS. That means you should also have the right to protest, which means time, place, and manner restrictions need to be struck down, which means we need another Bruin in the First Amendment. It should be text, history, and tradition. Were there laws on the books that said, hey, you can't protest in town hall? Were there laws on the books saying, hey, you can't video record in town hall? If there weren't, in 1791, then those rules go bye-bye.
So this is an interesting. Actually, I think it's an interesting way to segue into our next topic, because the next topic is actually another Roberts case decided yesterday. It deals with the First Amendment. So, well, not specific.
I haven't heard about
Oh,
this.
well, not specifically relating to this type of First Amendment issue. It is. So several years ago, there was a case in the Supreme Court. You've probably heard of it. It's the infamous Masterpiece Cake Shop case. This, I believe, is the third time, not specifically that guy, but the third time Colorado has tried this exact same thing, and the third time the Supreme Court has knocked it down. Let me pull up the actual case for a moment.
You got a link to it?
Yes. While I do that, would you like to just explain to, if anyone does not know of Masterpiece Cake Shop, what that ruling was all about?
Okay, so Masterpiece Cake Shop was uh, a case brought in Colorado where I think it was a lesbian couple, wasn't it? Went into a cake shop and asked to get a custom cake from the owner. And the owner declined to do the wedding cake. They took them to court, and this went all the way up to SCOTUS. And SCOTUS said if it was a regular service that uh, if it was a regular service that you were asking for, something that is part of the daily for the baker, then yes, he would be forced to service you. However, because this is a custom service, it's not something he does on a daily basis for everyone, he has the right to refuse your service. Uh, and he is able to be much more discriminatory in customer services such as that. And we've actually talked about that case recently because of 9mm SMG on Twitter saying that he should be allowed to refuse to sell to trans people. He should be allowed to refuse to sell firearms to trans people. And I called bullshit on that because that's the very service that you are doing every day. You are selling firearms, you are selling ammunition. You must sell as
Um,
long as they are not being a disruption in the business. You cannot refuse their service.
Interesting tidbit about the Masterpiece Cake Shop case as well. He had actually offered to sell them just a normal cake when he
Mm-hmm.
initially refused, but they said no, and they insisted on a custom-made cake. So this case does not actually revolve around that cake shop, thankfully, but this case, 303 Creative LLC versus Elenis, deals with does a graphic design company have to make a have to design a gay website basically, and similar similar opinions were drafted as to the masterpiece cake shop opinion relating to it.
Let's see, 303 Creative.
I may have got it slightly wrong with if it was a graphic design, but it had to do with basically making a gay website, which
Um,
is kind of a silly sentence to have to say, but
so the owner had been selling website development services and wanted to move into making wedding announcement websites. Um, Now I I could fall on either side of this because this is the daily service,
true. But it is
but
also
it's
a
also a custom service.
yeah, and it's also creative. Like a lot of this hinged on it being because it's creative work, right? It's not just, for example, selling ammunition, right?
Yeah.
It's like art kind of. Like you can't be forced to paint a gay painting, for example.
Yeah. So like I said, I can fall on either side of this because it is a daily service, but it's also a custom service. And because it is a custom service and he's he's already very discriminating in custom services to begin with. You know, most people are. Um, I'm going to have to side with the the company and not the people that wanted to purchase the service. It sucks, and I understand that, but I mean, in this day and age, it's very very cutthroat to begin with. I mean, anyone can go online and spend a month or two learning how to code. And making a website has become so graphically uh
Capable.
yeah, well, when I started learning how to make websites, I learned code. Now you just have to click buttons and put stuff where you want it. And the design software actually does everything for you.
Yeah, with the amount of websites, I'm sure everyone has seen ads for them, but uh, like they even advertise about how easy it is to make a website, so you don't have.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the thing is, it's so
Part of
stinking. Oh,
part of what you were getting at, yeah.
it's so stinking easy to do that you don't really need to go somewhere for a custom website for yourself. You buy a domain name, that's $5, well, $12 for a year if you want a .com. Um, and then it's so extremely easy to do this. And I mean, I've built my own domain inside of my house, and I'm building a website for myself that eventually will host the podcast. But that's beside the point. You don't have to go here, and I understand it takes a couple months to learn how to do this stuff if you're doing hard coding, but no one's doing hard coding to begin with.
Yeah, it's the issue with, I guess, learning to code for a lot of people is, and to be perfectly honest, it's a really high learning curve at the beginning. It's somewhat, to get started from no knowledge to enough to do something is actually pretty difficult, but it gets a lot
Oh yeah.
easier after that. The learning curve is steep, but once you actually get over that hill, it's relatively easy from there on. It can be tedious, but it's not like you're learning an entirely new language or something.
The biggest thing in learning how to code is figuring out how object oriented languages work. The only object oriented language that I've ever learned is CSS. I, all of you are so young. I don't know if you remember an old blog website called Xanga,
Nope.
Xanga. Um, you'd blog about your day, and you'd go around and look for your friends' pages and you'd comment on them. But they introduced CSS code into their page layouts, and I learned how to make page layouts for all of my friends. And I learned just how to identify the objects on the website and stick those all into my CSS code and give it to my friends so that they could put it in their profiles and everything would work. And Z says that she had to learn CSS in high school. I didn't. CSS was so new when I was in high school that very few people knew it.
Yeah, I well, not being that young, I don't think I was ever learning any bit of code in high school either. It seems only like the current generation, it's like Zoomers and such, for the most part, that are learning programming in school now.
Um, when I went through school, the only thing we really had for lessons, and they were all electives, were SQL database, Java, web design, and Linux. That's all we had.
So before we get too off track, relating to this Supreme Court case, there was a tweet I wanted to pull up. Maybe you all will agree with this, maybe not, but I'm curious to get your perspectives on it. Let me just pull that up now. This is a tweet by a account known as Fisher King 64, and it relating to what it says is in relation to this AP article that says court rules in favor of designer who refuses to make wedding websites for gay couples. It said, "It's the framing that's infuriating. What really happens in these cases is a gay advocacy group asks around about who might not want to participate in a gay wedding, then generates an artificial lawsuit to destroy them. It's the small business owner who is the victim." Curious what if any of you would agree or disagree with that statement.
Um, I in this case I would agree, but in say the master bakery whatever, no, I don't buy that.
Well, I know after the first case, someone showed up and tried to ask him. Like, there was a thing. I would say the second attempt to get him was much more likely than that of the first, where someone showed up and like asked him to make a gender transition cake, which I don't think that's really a thing. And he
Yeah.
also said no, and they sued him again. That seemed a lot more malicious than the first case, than the actual Supreme Court case.
Um, and I'm surprised that these courts are even letting things get all the way up to the Supreme Court, given the first case.
Yeah, all I can say is probably activist judges.
I would honestly have to look at how this was ruled all the way from the circuit up to Supreme Court.
And also it might is also likely just like the state of Colorado just trying to punish this man via the process, right? Because they don't really have to pay for lawyers, right? The state has infinite money. The only one who actually suffers through the process is the owner of the shop. Right?
Well, it wasn't even the state though.
Wasn't it the state of it was some, or was it that he sued the state? Um, at least in the first one, it was some. Wasn't it some state agency that was the other plaintiff in the case?
Give me a second here.
All right. Wasn't it some state agency of Colorado ruled that he had discriminated against them, and that's how this whole
He sued Colorado
oh, never mind then. I was incorrect on that.
in 2018 because uh, Colorado slapped him for being discriminatory.
Right.
And that was a 7-2 decision when he got that to the Supreme Court. Um, the majority was Kennedy, joined by Roberts, Breyer, Alito, Kagan, and Gorsuch. There was a concurrence written by Kagan, joined by Breyer. There was a concurrence written by Gorsuch, joined by Alito, and a concurrence written by Thomas, in part joined by Gorsuch. And then the dissent was Ginsburg and Sotomayor.
Of course. Honestly, up until Jackson, Sotomayor has probably been the worst justice. Or, actually, I take that. Not the worst, the dumbest of all the justices.
Honestly, I'd like to see a lot of the others uh, like Bruin. I I want to see if she wrote anything for the Bruin decision.
She probably did. Let me take a look.
Syllabus.
She did not, but she did join the dissent that was written by Breyer.
Now, I'm looking through the opinion right now for the dissent. And for anyone that doesn't know, you can actually um, find the written opinions on the Supreme Court's website, but they are extremely long. The Bruin decision was 135 pages.
That's the majority decision or the dissent?
That was the entire decision.
Oh.
That's the syllabus, the majority decision, all concurrently written decisions, and all dissenting decisions.
So they don't issue those like separately. They are all they
No,
all come together. Oh.
it's all part of one record. When when whenever you have a case, each case has a record, or each case is one record. You have all of the documents in the record. When a case concludes, uh, the motions, the decisions, they all get put into different piles in the record. So motions get their own pile. Uh they'll reference presented evidence, um and then decisions will get their own part of the record. But all of all of the opinions in a record are all part of one document. All evidence in a record is all part of one document, and all motions in a record are all one document. They just get added on and on and on and on. So once uh once a case makes it up to the Supreme Court, then all of the written opinions by all of the justices all go to um all go into one file. So this is Justice. Okay, so here's the dissent on page 84. Justice Breyer, with whom Justice Sotomayor and Justice Kagan joined dissenting in 2020, 45,222 Americans were killed by firearm. Since the start of this year, 2022, there have been 277 reported mass shootings, an average of more than one per day. Referencing the gunviolencearchive.org website. Many states have tried to address some of the dangers of gun violence just described by passing laws that limit, in various ways, who may purchase, carry, or use firearms of different kinds. I can already see this is a bad opinion to sign on to.
Yep.
First, the court decides this case on the basis of the pleadings without the benefit of discovery or an evidentiary record. Discovery occurred in the initial case. you're supposed to so the my lord, I am
It's
this
that bad.
frustrates me. It's that bad. When a case comes up on appeal, whether it be an appellate court, a circuit court, whatever, at the lowest level, when a case is created, there's discovery. In a civil case, there's what's called discovery. And the plaintiff can sue the defense for discovery, for certain records, to build their case of facts, undisputed facts. Once you get discovery, you build these facts and you argue back and forth in motions between the plaintiff and the defense as to what are facts in the case. And eventually, by the end of the case, before the court finishes, you have a well-defined set of facts in the case. Once the case closes and it's brought up on appeal, those facts are set in stone. You can add facts to the case, but you can't argue that this fact isn't fact afterwards. You have to deal with the facts that are understood in the case thus far. So,
Is there no way, like, assume there was some egregious, like, quote unquote fact that was presented at like the lowest levels by like
mhm,
by some activist judge, and it was
yep.
allowed. You can't even argue like even on like there's no way to get that stricken from the record on an appeal.
No, there's no way to get it stricken from the record. If it was a fact that had adverse uh, adverse consequences in the case, what can happen is upon appeal, the uh, the appellate judge may say it doesn't matter what this fact is. In reality, it it it's so uh say you bring a civil suit against a police officer, their department, the city that employs them, so on and so forth. The federal lawsuit, the first thing that you have to do is get rid of qualified immunity. And a judge may say, "Oh, well, uh this is this may be true, but it doesn't matter because this other thing is true." You've got two facts. One of them says uh, the the dude's guilty, but he has qualified immunity because there's never been a case like this before. That's generally why qualified immunity is supposed to be upheld. But you can point to another case where there has actually been a similar set of circumstances, but the judge says it doesn't matter because it's not close enough. But you take that up on appeal, and you keep taking that up on appeal until you get to SCOTUS. And then SCOTUS says, well, while the judge there says it doesn't matter because there wasn't a close enough case, we find that the case that was presented was close enough. So the the facts don't change,
Is it
but
only SCOTUS that can do that, or can any of the appeals courts above it also, like below SCOTUS, also do that?
any any court that handles an appeal can do that. So when you're bringing a federal lawsuit, you bring that in federal court in a circuit court.
All right.
Then you can go up to the circuit appellate court. Then it can go up to a circuit appellate en banc hearing. And then it can go to a full panel hearing. Once it goes through the second en banc, then it can go to SCOTUS. And SCOTUS can decide. But any step in that chain, the judges hearing it can reverse the decision of the last judge or the last panel. So if it was if the base of the argument is qualified immunity right now, and the federal judge says no, qualified immunity stays in place, you can take that up to the circuit appellate court. And the circuit appellate court can reverse the decision of the first judge. Well, now qualified immunity has been taken away, but we feel it shouldn't be, so we're going to take it up to a 3-judge en banc in the appellate. And the 3 judges hold a hearing and say, yeah, we're going to uphold qualified immunity. Well, now the decision's been reversed. You take that up to a full panel en banc, which is all of the appellate judges in the circuit. And they'll all come together, they'll have a hearing, and they may reverse that and say, no, qualified immunity is stricken. No qualified immunity. And then you've now got 2 reversals. You take that up to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS says, yeah, we'll uphold qualified immunity. Or no qualified immunity. Every step in that chain, the original decision, the last decision, it can all be reversed. But it's all based on the pleading of facts that were set in stone at the end of the original case. So all of the facts are there. You don't need any more discovery, which is my issue with the dissent in the Bruin decision. The dissenting judges wanted discovery, which they don't need. It's already all there. You're going to be hard pressed to find any single SCOTUS decision where they got new discovery. Most of the cases are where they get discovery of evidence is in criminal cases. That's one of the only times that they'll get new discovery when a case comes before them is when it's in a criminal case. But even then it's rare. Okay, so I'm sucking up a lot of time on this. Let's go ahead and get to the second actual topic of today, and that's Dylan Mulvaney.
All right. I will pull up the tweet you mentioned.
Now I'm in a large group of people that dislike Dylan Mulvaney. I found a lot of her videos kind of cringy, but given my background, go ahead and pause that video and make sure that it's uh, go into your routing table and make sure that is checked for us so we can hear the video. It would probably be under browser. Okay. Yeah, so I'm working on context. People on the right have been talking about how she's in woman face and she's abhorrent and not a real trans person, and I've I've found myself recently in disagreement with them. So a lot of the people I spend my time around on Twitter are people who label themselves as transsexual. Uh, and there are a few of them that I don't like. We've talked about Blair White. I'm not a fan. Her firearms handling is abhorrent. Uh, but they all basically define transsexual as someone who goes through the process of, you know, surgeries, hormone replacement therapy. And by that standard, Dylan Mulvaney is transsexual. But there there's one person uh, that interacts with Blair White specifically that brought up a very important thing about Dylan Mulvaney. And let me see if I can find it. Um, I don't know her or his actual name, but I will send you the link to his Twitter or her Twitter. I don't know how she talks anymore. Um,
Alright, I'm gonna just pull that up real quick.
and in fact, let me actually send you the tweet that sparked the entire reason why I wanted to talk about this. Uh, Miss Shapeshifter had actually said, in my expert opinion, Dylan Mulvaney is not taking his estrogen pills. I am not seeing any fat redistribution and weight gain, and that is usually attributed to higher levels of estrogen in biological males. According to the transgender ideology, Dylan is still very valid as a trans woman, regardless if he is castrated with estrogen or not. As we know from trans representation on Twitter and media, most trans women very much enjoy the functionality of their penises and usually uh, don't castrate themselves long term. Community just wants to make sure castration options are available and covered by insurance to those who are the most mentally ill and hate their natural body parts the most. Dylan has gotten better at makeup and he looks good in the recent video. So she's basically invalidating Dylan as trans because Dylan hasn't put on any weight. You know, you don't see any actual development of breasts. You don't see any additional fat. But I have a major theory about this. When you transition later in life, as Dylan has, you are encouraged by a lot of trans people, especially on Reddit, to recapture your youth. Dress as you would have as a teenager if you were in the correct body. And I fell into this for a little bit when I first started my transition. But what what got me away from that was I noticed a lot of predatory behavior in those subreddits. There are a lot of people that are extremely pedophilic and will actually use trans people and help them get certain surgeries. So in Dylan's case, she's had facial feminization surgery. She doesn't look male, but the only thing that's making her look female right now is the makeup. These predators on these subreddits are actually going in here and making it so the people they prey upon look more androgynous as teens than the the gender that they identify with as adults. And I think Dylan has fallen into this group. She's not gaining any fat. There's no fat redistribution, which means she's being abused by these people. And ever since the start of her journey, I've kind of been on the side of, yeah, what she's doing is a little bit cringy, but a lot of us that transition later in life are encouraged to recapture our youth in this manner. I think she just got sucked in with these people that, you know, are in her head, in her ear, telling her what to do, how to do it. She's not going down the right path for herself. She's just going down a path that has been laid before her, and I don't think it's the right one. Which is what me and Stoner were discussing. I think if we could get her away from these people, we could probably do a lot of stuff for her, and she might be in a better headspace. Because if you listen to the video, not only did she get shit on by the right, but she got shit on by Bud Light, by Anheuser-Busch.
She did?
Oh yeah, she got shit on by Anheuser-Busch. They didn't do shit after the outrage. They didn't do jack squat. And she's basically been in hiding ever since.
Like, when you say in
I,
hiding, do you mean just not online, or actually, like, physically in hiding?
she hasn't made a video in between when the outrage started and this video that's in the tweet. She hasn't made any video, she hasn't spoken publicly, nothing. This is the first time she's said anything for anyone since the outrage started. She's been cornered by uh what's his name that got canned from his own news agency. Um I
Uh,
can't remember.
which
He Veritas. He
James O'Keefe.
started Veritas. Yeah, James O'Keefe. She got cornered by James O'Keefe.
She did?
Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of what James O'Keefe does?
Yes, that's what James O'Keefe does. And I'm not upset with him for it, but given the fact that she's had basically no support from the people that said that they would support her, and no support from the right, no support from the left, and just sporadic support on Twitter, I don't blame her for not doing jack squat since the outrage started.
Understandable. I'm gonna go ahead and play the video then. But first, just to note, as this is an Ian Miles Chong post.
The dog killer.
Exactly. He is a dog killer. He will never not be a dog killer. And yeah, don't kill dogs. And now I'm gonna go ahead and play the video.
Hi.
Can everyone hear the video?
One thing I will not
No.
tolerate people saying about me.
Interesting. This year, so yeah, the routing table looks good.
In audience mix, it shows browser,
Yes.
and when you play the video in the browser shows up, right?
It should. Let me just verify something.
Is that I don't like beer because
Yes, it does.
Okay, and that's also in voice chat mic, where the browser is turned on.
Voice chat mic. Oh, alright. That could be. It's currently unchecked. Alright, let's see if this works.
hi.
Yep, we can hear it.
Excellent. Then I shall play the video now.
Hi. One thing I will not tolerate people saying about me is that I don't like beer because I love beer and I always have. I built my platform on being honest with you, and what I'm about to tell you might sound like old news, but you know that feeling when you have something uncomfy like sitting on your chest? Well, that's how I feel right now, so this feels like the right thing to do. I took a brand deal with a company that I loved, and I posted a sponsored video to my page. And it must have been a slow news week because the way that this ad got blown up, you would have thought I was like on a billboard or on a TV commercial or something major. But no, it was just an Instagram video. And the wildest part is that they also sent me one can with my face on it. You might have seen it. And funny story, I had the can around my house, but then I realized, wait, I need to protect this can. So I hid it somewhere, and now I can't find it because I hid it so well. But when I do find it, I feel like it needs to go in a museum, preferably behind bulletproof glass. And you might be thinking, Dylan, why bring it up now? I'm bringing it up because what transpired from that video was more bullying and transphobia than I could have ever imagined. And I should have made this video months ago, but I didn't. And I was scared, and I was scared of more backlash, and I felt personally guilty for what transpired. So I patiently waited for things to get better. But surprise, they haven't really. And I was waiting for the brand to reach out to me, but they never did. And for months now, I've been scared to leave my house. I have been ridiculed in public. I've been followed. And I have felt a loneliness that I wouldn't wish on anyone. And I'm not telling you this because I want your pity. I am telling you this because if this is my experience from a very privileged perspective, know that it is much, much worse for other trans people. For a company to hire a trans person and then not publicly stand by them is worse, in my opinion, than not hiring a trans person at all, because it gives customers permission to be as transphobic and hateful as they want. And the hate doesn't end with me. It has serious and grave consequences for the rest of our community. And you know, we're customers too. I know a lot of trans and queer people who love beer, and I have some lesbian friends who could drink some of those haters under the table. But To turn a blind eye and pretend everything is okay, it just isn't an option right now. And you might say, but Dylan, I don't want to get political. Babe, supporting trans people, it shouldn't be political. There should be nothing controversial or divisive about working with us. And I know it's possible because I've worked with some fantastic companies who care, but caring about the LGBTQ plus community requires a lot more than just a donation somewhere during Pride Month. And all this to say, bottom line is that if you follow me, if I've made you smile, if you care about me, I need you to care about every trans person. And I need you to
Okay,
support us,
pause.
and I need you to stand by us.
Okay, that's the gist of it.
Forgot to turn this on. A couple of things I want to say about this video. First, Dylan Mulvaney is still doing those fucking TikTok crazy eyes, even in this video. I don't know why people keep doing them, but they're very off-putting and make people look very insincere. The second corollary to that point, this is the only thing I've ever heard from Dylan Mulvaney that actually sounds sincere and honest. I am
So, your first point, the crazy eyes, that's actually
Yes.
from the brow lift in the facial feminization surgery.
Oh.
There's nothing she can do about that.
Oh, that's unfortunate because you know about the phenomenon I am referring to, right? Like the the Dash Dabrowski and the Dash Dabrowski clones are all doing that. The various crazy, the partisan Democrat people who like do rants on TikTok, they all kind of do that. All right, so if in her case it's not she's not actually intentionally doing it, then fair enough.
And yes, this is the first time most people will see her as being sincere with what she's saying. But you also have to understand most of the stuff that you've seen before now has been in her at the start of her transition. She was again trying to recapture her youth. And as the Bud Light era approached, she was starting to just kind of find her style.
Yeah.
And then all of the Bud Light shit happened and she went silent.
Right. Though I can understand that. Though, to her point of Bud Light like abandoning her, I do kind of have to say that like, what's the company supposed to do? They were hemorrhaging revenue. I mean, companies exist not to push morality, but to make money.
They're still hemorrhaging revenue.
Yes, but I think that was their attempt to stop hemorrhaging revenue.
Yeah, that was their attempt to stop hemorrhaging revenue. Here's the thing everyone should have learned from Trump to begin with. If you say something, if you do something stupid, lean into it. And if people don't like it, lean into it more. If Bud Light made it so bad, made it as bad as it is now, they shouldn't have reversed course. Because now you're on a path and you've got to take it. It's different for an individual, but if you're a politician, if you're a company, if you say or do something, you need to stick with it and you got to dig in. Reversing course is just going to make you look even more disingenuous as a politician, as a company.
Right. Though I will say on that it might depend somewhat on what your actual customer base is, because if your customer base is a bunch of, and again, I do not mean to use this term in a derogatory manner, but if your customer base is a bunch of rednecks and like NASCAR fans and the like, then this is probably not a good idea to continue to double down on such a thing, because
Listen, They had already lost them.
Yeah.
They had already lost the the NASCAR, the rednecks. As soon as it went up, they lost them.
Yeah. But I mean,
And it looks like Luna is trying to talk, but we still can't hear her.
but
Oh
like,
no, I was just
sorry.
moving around.
Oh, okay.
But
Um,
I don't
so
think there
they
is anyone else who drinks Bud Light. Like, the people who would be more on Dylan's side aren't going to be drinking a piss beer like Bud Light. No offense to anyone who likes Bud Light. They'd be drinking
no.
like
I
fancy
like
craft
Platinum.
brews.
Well, okay, and that's here's here's what I'm saying though. Once you lose your base, you're gonna hemorrhage revenue. There's there's nothing you can do about that. But don't reverse course and try to get them back because it's never going to happen. You're never going to get them back. You need to lean into it and rebrand. If Bud Light had stood by Dylan and said, "Hey, maybe maybe we did this in the incorrect manner." Okay, but we still want Dylan on board and we still want to capture a different market. We're sorry that we lost your business. We hope one day you'll come back.
Well, while it is true you'd never get all of your customer base back, I do think that, like, if rather than just kind of make, like, do the worst of both worlds and neither apologize nor outright stand by its decision, if they had done something like actually apologized for it to their customer base and, I don't know, maybe like make a special Bud Light edition, fucking Pat Tillman edition, put his face on the beer, they might have been. It is my belief that they probably would have been able to get a fair amount of their old customer base back. But as I said, they chose the worst of all worlds by doing neither of those things.
Well, and it's like I said, if they had come out with a simple statement saying, "Hey, we're sorry that we did this in a manner that you didn't like. We, however, would like Dylan Mulvaney to stay on and maybe to do something more because we do want to capture another demographic. We hope one day you will come back to us." That sounds sincere. It stands by the person that you've branded yourself with. And yeah, I know that you're still going to hemorrhage customers, but eventually people are going to not hold it against them anymore because they do sound sincere. They do sound like they're trying to do something good. What's Stoner saying? Uh, so Stoner has said, "I hate to say it, but it seems like the rightoids are getting just as violent, hateful, and merciless as the left is. It would have been more successful to put Dale Earnhardt Sr. on their cans, or Hank Williams Sr. Isn't Hank Williams dead?"
I think. But and just me personally, I can't stand Bud Light, but I would buy a single can if they did put Pat Tillman's face on it, just because that would be a cool beer to have. But other than that, it tastes like watered down piss. So
Yeah,
I'm not going to
well,
complain too much.
I mean, I stay away from beer because it has phytoestrogens anyway.
But being trans, wouldn't you want phytoestrogens?
You want bioidentical estrogens.
What is
Phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens work similarly, but instead of fat redistribution, you just get fat gain. Uh, in men, especially men that drink a lot of beer, as they get older, they develop a a thing called uh
What, like a beer gut or like a
gynecomastia.
beer belly?
No, gynecomastia, where
Oh,
they'll not well. I mean, they'll get the beer belly, but they'll also develop uh unhealthy breast tissue, and
They
you
will
don't
get
want.
moves.
Yeah, they'll get moobs, and they won't be healthy moobs.
Uh, what
Whereas
is the what's the difference between healthy moves and unhealthy moves?
it's the manner in which they're developed. So, say for instance, you're taking in a lot of soy. Uh, Soy contains a bit of both bioidentical and phytoestrogens. So you'll get some fat redistribution and you'll get some fat gain. But phytoestrogens only cause fat gain. And you don't want that.
Say, for example, that you develop these unhealthy moves. I mean, is it like there's a greater, like, say, cancer risk, or it actually has harmful effects on your health, or is it just that you just get fatter instead of redistributing everything?
Breast tissue that's developed via gynecomastia. So breast tissue created by phytoestrogens is more susceptible to breast cancer.
Oh, I see.
It's also a bit more what I would call saggy, whereas breast tissue created by bioidentical estrogen is more formed and tighter. Uh, we're not talking like perky bits, but we're talking about healthier tissue.
I would
There is
also,
health
sorry, I would
there.
like to point out that it is interesting that we have segued from talking about landmark Supreme Court cases to the difference between perky and non-perky moves, and that is a quite funny segue.
Um, yeah, but in in the overarching theme of all of this, I think Dylan has been abused by people online, not just by the right, but also by people within our own community that have created uh, this scapegoat for the right. I
Yeah.
think she needs to get off social media, and a bunch of us need to come pick her up and do what we can to erase the brainwashing that has been done, because she does not look like she's in a healthy place mentally or physically.
Yeah, I will also admit it is very. Oh, I can't say because I can't read minds, but it is very obvious to me that a lot of people on the right see her as like the way to get normal people against well, the way to turn normal people against all the the left, but in general, but more broadly the LGBT Q etc. community. And I think they think that that turning her into a cudgel like that is going to work. No idea if they're correct or not, but Yeah, it does seem to be they are very much throwing her under the bus.
Uh, okay. So let's be done with Dylan and move on to your Frenchies.
Alright, perfectly in time for Canada Day, which today it is, and for anyone out there listening, happy Canada Day. And with that, we will transition to non or French speaking non Canadians. Also, nice cat in the background. Go pat it.
Yeah, she's still in heat, I'm sure.
Yeah, she's gonna be like this for at least like a week.
Okay, so the Frenchies are rioting. Why are they rioting? Water remains wet. That's funny. Uh,
Yeah, they're rioting because they're French. I mean, asking the French.
So they are rioting because in one of the poor or in one of the working class like North African districts, because as you may have known, France colonized a lot of North Africa hundreds of years ago, and now there are a lot of poor North Africans who've immigrated to France. In one such community, the police shot and killed some teenager in during a traffic stop. And it's basically, from my understanding, has basically been like days now of race riots in France. And like, interestingly enough, for France, there are videos of people walking around with like automatic weapons, just firing them into the air and burning up a whole bunch of stuff down.
based.
Yes, that is based.
Yeah, I've been hearing that of them having like uh, everywhere from like rifles, handguns to even explosives, like both like crudely made, like anarchist cookbooks style to like decently made explosives.
Yeah, and while I don't generally like to use such a shit website for a source, they're covering it decently here, so I will rely on CNN. Their international stuff is far less egregious than their domestic stuff, though still not great. Yeah, so there was a 17-year-old, I think Algerian, was shot by police and died. And since then, they've deployed. Like, these are serious. Like, these are more serious than the usual French riots. They've had to like mobilize something like 50,000 additional police to attempt to deal with them. They're burning down very large. They burnt down an entire shopping mall. Yeah, this is. Well, as I said, water remains wet. Right, the French are rioting, but this time it does seem to be much more of like
French rioting.
Unfortunately, it seems like it's much more of a '90s style LA like race riots, where instead of rioting, who's that guy who was beaten by the cops that kicked off the LA riots?
Rodney King.
Yeah, Rodney King. So the Rodney King type of situation, but instead of beating him, they killed the kid. There hasn't been much evidence to say like, was this a justified killing or not? Though from what I have seen, it seems like there was a 17-year-old from a quote unquote troubled neighborhood, and he was pulled over for supposedly reckless driving. Something happened and he was shot.
Well, I'm gonna say this
Mm-hmm.
about all of Europe. They're all racist as fuck. We, as much as I hate Tim brought to light how absolutely racist Sweden is.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers the old Donald Trump 2016 last night in Sweden quote. Well, Tim had gone and actually seen Sweden and been to the no-go areas, and it's all the whole reason why the problems that they've had in Sweden exist is because they were fucking racist to begin with. They did everything they could to keep these people contained in these areas, and they caused their own issues.
Well, I mean, did these people, like, how did they try to contain them in these areas?
They so when the when the refugees came in, they basically put them there and didn't encourage integration. They didn't encourage teaching kids the language of the land. They didn't encourage their own kids to interact with the children in these areas, basically walling off these immigrants and their now descendants and creating a line in the sand saying, "You're you, we're us, don't come around us. We don't want anything to do with you."
Yeah, that is should need to be mentioned more because I've never heard that specific side of it.
Well, and so everyone in Europe calls the US racist, but we actually try to integrate people. We want the kids to go to school. We want them to have interactions with us. We want whoever comes to our country to become part of the country. We want them to be part of the society. We don't want to wall them off and say, "You stay there," which was half the problem with the projects. The
Yeah.
Chicago projects.
Right.
Horrible fucking idea. It's also why the projects are run the fuck down.
True. So as I realized we are running short on time
Low
here.
on time.
There is one last thing I wanted to get all of your perspectives on. So there was an interesting video that came out of, as you know, there's currently ongoing primary going on in the Republican Party in the U.S. You know, mostly it's just Trump v. DeSantis, and DeSantis just released a interesting video, and I'd like to get all your opinions on it. If you haven't seen it already, then, or if you have, but it's only a 1-minute video, so I think I have enough time to play it. There we go. Let me know if all of you can hear this.
I will do everything.
Could you hear it?
We can hear it.
All right.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens.
If Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In the future, can transgender women compete in Miss Universe?
Yes.
Make America great again.
I cannot think of anything more horrifying.
It really has shut down drag.
Just produced some of the harshest, most draconian laws that literally threaten trans existence.
Congratulations, Ron DeSantis. Mission accomplished. You win.
First, I just want to say,
So you
imagine
said this was
actual-
hosted by like
the DeSantis campaign.
I will
First, I just want to point out
Jesus.
how cringe it is to actually, for a political campaign, to actually use the Giga Chad meme.
This whole thing was just like it looks like the type of thing that would be like edited and posted on Twitter by someone who calls himself a Sigma male.
Well, see, well, take take a closer look at the tweet, because the video wasn't made by the DeSantis campaign. It was made by Proud Elephant.
Oh, isn't I thought DeSantis War Room was actually affiliate of the campaign. Was it not?
Look under the video. It says from Proud Elephant.
Under the video, it says
Oh,
which is a completely different user. But the DeSantis campaign, it looks like, if
they reposted it and they
Yeah,
just
but-
simply sourced it to Proud Elephant.
right.
um
And just Stoner,
So-
as I believe said, seems to me Trump is more LGBTQ friendly than
Which-
DeSantis.
he-
Honestly, I don't think Trump has ever really cared much about that issue.
no,
Doesn't
he
seem like-
hasn't. He was the first president that was pro LGBT when he came into the presidency.
Yeah. And I mean,
Now,
he's
Obama-
a New York
Well, I mean,
voter.
one of the
It's
first
not
things
his-
he did though was actually one of the
Go ahead.
Sure, I was gonna say one of the first things he did though was actually implement the ban of LGBT, or specifically
I think you're having a bad
specific
internet
trans
connection.
people in the military. As around that time,
It seems,
I remember,
unfortunately, that issues
just
occurring were
being
like
looking into things like that, and it being like, oh, hey, now trans people are banned from the military, and it wasn't up until recently that that ban was actually overturned.
Okay, so I got the gist of that. The banning trans people. It didn't actually ban trans people. It banned people from transitioning while in service. And actually, one of the people that I'm not friends with, that I specifically do not like on Twitter, that's a trans person, is actually in the army and has been since 2015, and she's been in the entire time. She's an officer. She transitioned early, and she's had several surgeries while in service, but she didn't actually transition while she was in. Between her end of her enlistment and her going officer side as a Mustang, she did her transition, and she was in that entire time. But what has changed since Trump has left office is people can transition while in service. That was the big thing. But even now, transitioning, whether you're in service or out of service, they'll only do certain things. So the VA will cover certain gender transition procedures, HRT. They will cover laser hair removal or or electrolysis. Um, they'll they'll cover the medications. I don't remember what else they'll cover, but that is definitely something that is nice to know. Yes, yes, Stoner. It will make people combat ineffective for a while.
Yes, just like I assume any other major surgery would.
Yes, any surgery, period. So to go overseas, you have to have your wisdom teeth removed, or you have to have a oral surgeon sign off to say they will never impact.
What is the stance on, say, elective surgeries while in service? Are you able to get them, or is it a strict no?
You are able to get them, but they will not be paid for by the military. You have to get them yourself, and the medical officer in your unit has to sign off on it.
I see.
Stoner.
So TRICARE wouldn't have covered my great new tits?
No, TRICARE would not cover your great new tits.
What is TRICARE?
TRICARE is the insurance company that covers service members and their families.
I see.
And Stoner, no, they are not anti-2A. Okay, so we have now gone over, and it is now time for everyone to sign off. I am going to start with Luna, our resident of the non-existent state. Please say goodbye to the audience.
How could I be leaving if I wasn't even here to begin with?
Somehow the cutting in it somehow the cutting in and out worked. And then we will end with Kota. Say goodbye, Kota.
Goodbye, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast.
And then our resident of the Soviet Kanakistani state, Dale.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy Soviet Kanakistan Day.
And we will all be seeing everyone next weekend. And for Dale, you have to mute the chat, mute your mic, and then start the music.
not sure what